Thank you, Kirk. I'm going to share you the femoral revision using the tapered foot stem and in terms of the stem length issue. If you look back, the tapered foot stem actually originally from Wagner, launched in 1987. It's a Swiss brass titanium with 8 longitudinal ridge and 2 degrees of taper angle. When they compare to the cylindrical stem, actually it's better in terms of axial and rotational stability. And then this can provide more compromise this diaphyseal bone of the femur. And when we look at the concept, the axial stability, because this design comes with the conical wedge geometry that match along the femoral canal, and for the rotation stability, it's engaged inside the endothelium of the bone. And this would take about 0.1 to 0.5 millimeter for the sharp foot that dig inside the endothelium of the bone. Currently, it can come with a 2.5 to 3 degrees of taper angle. But you need to know that if you go to the smaller taper angle, it would be more parallel of the stem toward the bone. And if you look back to the literature, they would say that most common complication of this type of stem is subsidence and leading to the unstable fixation. And the common causes of this failure is too small size prosthesis. And sometimes they might cut the length of the stem, or sometimes both. And literature have shown that subsidence of the stem more than 10 millimeter. It can range from 15 to 19%. And the current solution is depending on most of the surgeons need to get a learning curve. And you already heard from the previous speaker about the proximal modular body. And also in some scenario, for example, the anterior femur is too much in curvature. So the curved shape also another solution. And what about the indication to use the tapered foot stem? If you look at the Prapotsky classification, the recommendation to use can be 3A to 4. So 3A, 3B, 4, it could be a good candidate for using the tapered foot stem. But when you do templating, be careful that you need to know first the prerequisite thing is the system of the taper stem you're going to choose. Because they have a different taper angle, so the philosophy, the surgical technique may be a bit different. And again, the sizing and the diameter. Sometimes the sizing of when they say, for example, size 14, it's not just the proximal section. Some systems they provide this size based on the mid part of the section of the stem. And again, many systems, sometimes in the actual stem, they're including the foot diameter. For example, in this scenario, they call the rib height, and this is the mid portion. Sometimes they not include. So for example, size 14, right? Actually, the base diameter is just 12. So another 1 more millimeter on one side, and the other side become 14. So you need to be aware for this design. And this is why if the actual stem also including the foot, so when you do the templating, you need to be careful, and I would say that you need to get overlapping of the foot inside the cortical bone of the femur, usually about 1 millimeter on its size. And the suggest surgical technique, actually to provide a good axial and rotation stability, we need a distal fixation at a minimum 2 centimeter cortical contact. But if you can get 4 to 8 centimeters would be good. So this is why some experts would say that if you get the initial reamer cortical contact, if you can add another 2 to 3 millimeter reamer would be good, because it can provide more taper diaphyseal contact. And in general speaking, if you want the length of the stem, you should bypass any femoral defect, and at least should get 2.5 times of the canal diameter. But if you want to get a better result in terms of fixation, you might make sure that the stem tip should pass toward the intact intermediate canal, and if possible, if longer, up to 7 centimeters may be very good. And this is some experts would say that if you have less proximal bone loss, the taper engage. The taper here should be the upper The upper level should be in the area of the isthmus bone. But if you have more extensive femoral bone loss, you might choose the part of stem the longer, the body longer, but the taper engage at the higher level of the intact femoral isthmus. So this is why initial contact, if you add another 2 to 3 millimeter reamer diameter, it would provide this kind of fixation. So this is the philosophy. This is an example of 3 degrees of taper angle. You can see that if you start with 10 millimeter and you want to increase another 1 millimeter for the diameter, every time when you increase 1 millimeter, this for example go to 2 millimeter, the taper, this part can sink down for another 38 millimeter, equal to 4 centimeters. So this is why you need to concern that if you increase the diameter, the distal part of the stem can sink down along the canal longer. And again, if you use the 2 degrees of taper, it's gonna provide you each 1 millimeter of increment. It's gonna put the stem down another 3 centimeters. So this is why I would say that in my practice, I use 2 degrees taper angle. And in the operative evaluation, after I get the initial reamer and contact, I would want to get another larger for size. So I would go 1 to 2 millimeter diameter increment. So every time I add 1 millimeter, I would add another 3 centimeter in length of the stem. 2 millimeter diameter increasing, I would add 6 centimeter. So I seem to choose the longer stem. So from 190, I might go to 225, 265, according to the increment I use. This is example done by my senior surgeons a long time ago. And that time, I think they didn't concern anything about the length and the diameter, but they choose the longer one. And you see, this is 15 years. Even though the size is not that good, but it's still doing very well. And this is our experience. This is 3B femur. So when we get, this is the isthmus that we need to get bone contact. So we choose the longer stem, and when we follow the patient, not get the subsidence. This is another example of 3A. Sometimes we choose too much larger, so we get some crack and we need to do the wiring. This is also the drawback of this scenario. And again, this case, we choose a longer, as I told you about the philosophy. This is loosening of the full cylindrical cord stem, and again we choose the larger size and the longer stem, and it's stable. So in summary, I would say the taper foot stem in revision tall hip, the taper angle, you need to understand that smaller angle, the more parallel stem to the bone. And we want to avoid any subsidence. So during the templating, we need to know the system of individual very well, plan the size and length. And at surgery, if you want to add 1 or 2 more millimeter in terms of reaming diameter, you should think about adding the length of the stem 3 to 6 centimeters. Thank you.